Well, as a matter of fact, the income tax is now classically used as an example of how you can use the coordination of branches of government to work together to get an objective. And that was a pretty good example. We used the legislature to introduce the bill. We used the judicial to push forward on the need for a tax or some solution to the education project, and you need an executive to make the original proposal.
Without the Robinson versus Cahill decision, do you think the income tax would have been enacted during your time in office?
Probably not. I mean, Robinson versus Cahill gave rise to the need for doing something. And by the way, the income tax that was passed was not an income tax to raise more money. It was an income tax to raise different money. And when I campaigned in '77, I made that point, that I was not asking for more money, I was just asking for a different pocket. And so the net of all of that was basically to have the same amount of money, but a good portion of it from an income tax. And the income tax was used to support the school.
Did property taxes go down as a result?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they did. Trouble is, when property taxes go down, it doesn't take long for people to bring them back up again. And that's what's, as we sit here in 2006, that's what's making the people very cynical in New Jersey today, because they've seen it. They've seen, money wasted, and they've seen educational things become. You give me an extra $1, and the teachers want part of it, and the schools want part of it, and the standards keep going up. And if you're spending more, I want to spend more. That's the problem that the people are very cynical about today.
When your income tax package contained caps on spending growth at the local level, didn't it?
Yes, it did. But there were exceptions to the cap for various things, and
would you call it a tight cap or a loose cap that was easy to
it was
get around?
It was what we thought was a fairly tight cap, but exigencies were justified, and it kept growing. And then you have whatever Short Hills had as its per pupil. Everybody wanted that to begin with, and then it grows and feeds on itself.
Were there caps on both municipal and school district spending as part of your income tax?
I'm not visibly aware of that being so, but I think it was.
We are now 30 years after the fact, and state finances are terribly strained, as are local finances. I mean, this state has a serious fiscal problem, as the current governor, Corzine, has told us, and other governors have told us. Is that in spite of the tax you passed and created in the 70s? Is that what happened in the intervening years to?
Well, first of all, we've demanded a lot more. When I look at the current budget and see some of the things that we're funding, all of which are justified, and when I see all the money we're borrowing, most of which is not justified, hasn't been justified, I think it explains a lot. And I think what Corzine may do, and I'm speaking now for posterity, is sell some capital assets like the Turnpike in order to get us back even, so that from now on it's not just the huge debt that we're servicing with a major portion of the budget. Once you start getting rid of debt service, for example, it's going to help make it easier. And I think other states that are getting along well today are getting along because they don't have that inbred obligation to pay bond interest, pay off bonds.
You say that New Jerseyans ask a lot of their government. Is government doing more today than it was doing in your day?
When I first came into government, working for Governor Minor in 1955, the total state budget was under $500 million. And now what is it, 30 billion and counting? And that doesn't even account for the money we get off budget, like federal grants and so forth. So it's changed dramatically, and people expect things of government now that they didn't expect 50 years ago. And if you look at the budget and see what we're funding, not only the Christmas tree items, some of which are justified, but all in all, and we get these conflicting demands on government. You get an editorial one day in a paper that says we're spending too much money, we're wasting too much money. And then the next thing is an editorial about we're not doing enough for kids under the diapers program, or we're not spending enough on school teachers. I mean, we have to have better school teachers, and you have to do this for that. So we were just a Jekyll and Hyde kind of approach to all this.
Did you consider dropping the income tax as your proposal and just letting the courts enforce their own order?
I did.
That's what you did?
Yeah.
That's how it played out?
Yeah.
That's
what
how
happened?
It played out 2 years later?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Explain
What happened finally is the legislature is not moving the income tax bill. The schools are not being funded in accordance with what the Supreme Court had said is a constitutional way of doing it. So in 1976, I go before the court myself, and I say, you got to close the schools. They're not being funded legally, constitutionally, so close them.
Who went before the court? The Attorney General?
Me.
You stood up there?
Yeah.
You argued the case for the state?
Yes. It's in the books. And they closed the schools.
Step back 1 second. The governor goes to appear before the Supreme Court on the 4th floor of the State House Annex? Is that where the court met in those days?
That's where it was then.
And you appealed to the 7 justices to close the schools effective
July
September.
1st. July 1st.
School's not in session in July.
Some of them are.
And the court took that under advisement and...
No, they closed the school.
Immediately?
Yeah,
that day?
I don't know if it was that day, but it was a quick response. Yeah. And that's been used, by the way, as an example of how the branches of government working together can get some stuff done that maybe one branch by itself can't get done.
Explain.
By myself, I could not talk the legislature into passing that income tax. I go to court and I say, well, if I can't get it done, I want the schools closed, because that's what you guys and the Supreme Court have been saying that would be an inevitable result of not having proper funding. So now I got the courts on my side, and the courts put the leverage on I've got leverage on the legislature. The court now has real leverage on the legislature.
Interesting.
And the legislature came back right after that, passed the income tax.
In July?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, they pass it, and they make it sunset with the end of the Byrne administration, which which they thought was inevitable. And so if I lost that election, the income tax would have expired with me.
They really tied it to your name and your person?
Almost.
I mean,
No.
or
They
they
gave it a date.
they did it by date.
Yeah.
Yeah.